You know, sometimes I just want to be spoken down to and strawmanned by a pompous buffoon.
Well, I think atheism is going into twilight because I think that the many arguments that atheists brought forward in the past to demonstrate their case actually are beginning to lose their credibility.
Oh, perfect. Just what I wanted. So, please do tell me what my arguments are and why they are so poor. I cannot wait to find out what I think. As a world famous idiot, I have no idea what goes on inside my head.
I think you're absolutely right to say that in recent years, atheism has become much more aggressive, much more militant.
Has it though? I would concede that atheism is more brash and outspoken, perhaps disrespectful in many ways. But do you know why that might be? Well, back in the bad old days, you could be vilified, ostracised, and even killed for expressing any belief that was counter to whatever your local top religion was. And I'm not talking strictly atheist, but even many mildly different offshoots of the exact same faith would often lead to clashes in communities. So being of no faith whatsoever was basically insane. In fact, we still see a lot of this kind of thing today in certain theocratic nations, where many must seek asylum outside of their birth country simply because they don't agree with the powers that be and thus are in great danger. Thankfully not so anymore in most, if not all, Western nations, and that is simply going to lead to more people talking smack about you, without fear to life or limb. I think it's great, because I do it.
And I think the reason for that is because the prediction religion is going to disappear is simply not happening.
What? Who said that? And can you give me their atheist club membership number, because I'm going to have it revoked. I can't imagine religion will ever disappear for myriad reasons, many of them to do with death, others to do with the innate human compunction to ascribe meaning beyond themselves to things that they don't necessarily understand, or just simply that they believe a higher power exists. Whatever the reasoning, it's not going to go away. I think probably ever. Unless we become a huge amorphous single-minded blob called Slimeberino that only believes in doing a huge messy salsa dance at the centre of the universe. And as kind of amazing as that would be, I still prefer diversity of opinion in my people. So some of them are just going to have beliefs about the nature of things that differ wildly from one another.
I mean, I used to be an atheist myself.
Did you now? I gotta be honest, I don't think I really buy most of these. I was an atheist and then I wasn't. Mostly because either you're just full of it, or you never really were. You were perhaps one of those oft maligned, angry at God, quote unquote atheists, that do exist, but are considered kinda silly by everyone, theist and non-theist alike. Not saying it's impossible that you are a convert from not buying the evidence to the existence of God to suddenly doing so. I guess we can discern this from the quality of your arguments coming up that you used to believe.
And certainly when I was growing up in the 1960s, everybody was saying, hey, religion's on the way out. We've got a secular world coming in a generation, nobody's going to believe in God anymore.
Of course people in the 60s believed that, among other completely nonsensical things. They were either all high or busy doing unspeakable things to each other. Or a combination of both. Sounds pretty fun if I'm completely honest, but not exactly an environment that would breed nothing but stellar arguments for anything really. There's bound to be a lot of, hey man, trees are like hands from the ground, man. Okay, Moonsparkle, calm down.
And yet more people believe in God than ever before, and not just that, but a greater percentage of the population.
Well, I find that a little hard to believe, seeing as in my stomping grounds alone, the UK, it's something like 50% or more of the population identify as non-religious. But after looking into it, your claim appears to be true, and it technically is. But well, it's all about birth rates. Globally, religious families are producing higher numbers of offspring. And as we know, if you're born into a religion, you're A, gonna have it, and B, you're more likely to remain there. Especially if you are born into one of those aforementioned theocratic nations, where losing faith can mean losing your life. You're hardly gonna be quick to jump on the secular bandwagon. The fact is, where it matters to people like you or me, religion is on the decline, and regardless of the percentages worldwide, the places that are likely going to have the biggest impact on the future of the planet are becoming increasingly secular. And it's all ultimately irrelevant anyway. You using your lies, damn lies and statistics to make it look whichever way, even if 100% of the population believed in gods or what have you, it still wouldn't make it true.
I think atheists are angry about that, really angry.
First off, you think, don't lie. And secondly, what evidence do you have of this supposed anger relation? I mean, personally, I'm not angry about that idea at all. As discussed, I think it's an attempt on your part to skew reality along some frankly pointless path towards you being right. But even if it was exactly as you present in all corners, that still wouldn't make me angry. I might think it's a bit sad, but so long as the current trend towards separation of church and state remains, it really wouldn't bother me, and I honestly don't see it going anywhere too fast. Because even religious people need it. What if the state-sanctioned religion isn't yours? Well, that's a path we really don't want to go down now, is it? This is just my perspective, but I've also never heard a single other atheist say they are angry about how all them religious types are just too numerous. The only thing that tends to bring out the ire of your average God-hating atheoid is when some political dibdab decides people have far too many rights that make my best mate sad. Let's try and stop that, shall we? But again, it often upsets theists of different stripes too, so it's hardly an exclusive problem.
The theory says this, the observation says something completely different, and they feel that this is wrong.
I'm sorry, but that sounds like projection. I mean, you must have certain claims about reality, and I'll bet dollars to donuts that those observations just don't hold up your position in the slightest. And your claim of this thing I have made up about the thoughts of my opponents doesn't work out is strawmanning at its finest, my dude. But someone who says that God is real because a fortune cookie told him would think that. Pfft, everyone knows that fortune cookies don't exist.
And so what I think we're seeing is an increased stridency, which is basically an anger at the way that the theory simply hasn't been fulfilled as they said it would.
You know, I've been making a concerted effort to curb my foul language here on the Sir Sick channel. Mostly because, if I'm being completely honest,
I like money though.
But let me tell you this, and I mean it sincerely from the bottom of my cold dead little heart. You should go advertiser safe content yourself in the family friendlies, you smug son of a likely upstanding member of society. 'Cause I have to say, your smug condescension dwarfs anyone I think I've ever covered, and it does really get my hackles up. But that is irrelevant. And I wouldn't want you to confuse the irritation your attitude causes me with you actually being right in any way, shape or form. Because apparently now, having one type of engagement with a person, in this case stridency, by which I'm assuming you mean that they believe they are correct about the things they believe they are correct about. How completely absurd. Like that somehow becoming an automatic admission that they are wrong, and getting angry about it. That's simply, patently absurd.
Okay, use specific examples. Which are the arguments that you feel atheists are using but losing the battle based upon looking at the evidence?
That is a really great question. Let's see how he fails to answer it. I'm so sorry. I mean if.
Well, let me give you one example, which is very influential for me when I was an atheist.
Well, that's not a good start, is it? I mean, your stupid arguments are apparently so asinine they flip the script on you. But at least you will be using something from your own experience. So, first actual argument that you've actually heard an actual person actually say, even if that someone is hardly credible.
Many years ago, and that was religion leads to violence.
Really? Religion leads to violence? Like, as a matter of fact? No, the main thing religion can do is excuse violence. If you are doing what you are told by your grand Pumbaa, then slitting up all those filthy heathens, well, it's only a good thing. But it's not generally the religion that made them do it, but their broken mind. A person can justify just about anything if they try hard enough. Religion just makes that remarkably easy. But framing it as an inevitability is just intellectually dishonest. Some of the gentlest people I've ever met are religious. Literally wouldn't hurt a fly. And they technically practice the same religion as people who have committed heinous acts in the name of said faith. All in all, bad argument, 1 out of 10, see me after class.
And certainly, as someone who was growing up in Northern Ireland, that seemed to me to be a very, very powerful argument.
Only if you're completely ignorant of every other religion and faith and the rest of the world in general. Although I would not be surprised if ignorance is literally your middle name.
The real difficulty is this. There is no doubt that religion can indeed be a significant element in generating violence.
Am I being punked? I always kind of hate it when people just sit there and destroy their own points for me. I imagine it's kind of what the "they took care jibs" lot feel like whenever they see a foreign person.
But if you look at the history of the 20th century, if you look, for example, at the Stalinist era, you begin to realize that Stalin and others used...
Every single time you start to make one of your points, I just feel a little bit more of my faith in humanity seep away from behind the void-like visage obscured by this helmet. Go on then, give me another reason to set off all the nukes on Earth at once. Please, I dare you.
Violence to advance an anti-religious agenda.
The only reason that communist Russia was anti-religious is because the state effectively was the religion, with deity-esque leaders and control implemented over the populace with many of the same techniques used by certain religious groups, so they wouldn't want the competition. The only real difference was that they didn't have a monopoly on your soul, although if they could figure out a way to do it, I bet they would.
I don't think any human group has a monopoly on violence.
Precisely. The real issue here is that to be human seems to lead to violence.
Does it though? Stalin didn't commit acts of violence simply because lol. He had an ideology and used it to gain power and subjugate people. There are people who use religious ideas to do the exact same and use them to inspire violence in others. Yes, human beings have the capacity for violence, but as we have advanced as a species, we seem to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to do things peacefully and finding outlets for aggression. For a species that is apparently a hair's breadth from simply tearing itself to shreds at a moment's notice, it's kind of weird.
We are very, very good as human beings at inventing reasons for fighting other people. And it seems to me that what we need to recognize is there's something wrong with human nature.
Oh God, why is the camera zooming in like he's being profound? Yeah, there is something wrong with human nature. It keeps producing pseudo-intellectuals like you, making grand pronouncements on the essence of human beings whilst having no idea how they actually function. Again, I wouldn't mind, but he's so insufferably smug about it.
That means that we end up fighting each other. It's not specifically religious, but religion can be a factor here.
I'm sorry I have to do it, but come on. For someone so convinced about the inherent violence of people, does anyone actually think this man has ever been in a fight? Look, real talk. I am not a violent man. I abhor violence. I think it's pointless in all situations, bar one, when it has been inflicted first, but of course, the inflictor is at fault, shouldn't have done it anyway. However, as someone who hates violence, I have been in more fights than I can count, entirely against my will every single time. Perhaps there is just something wrong with my face, but at no point have I ever thought, huzzah, an excuse to be an absolute caveman. Maybe I'm alone in this. Maybe I am the lone pacifist in a sea of constantly on-edge lunatics. But I don't believe that for a second. Perhaps everyone who ever meets this guy face to face just has to slap him as hard as they can, and he assumes everyone else is the problem.
So I find the atheist argument that in some way, if we got rid of religion, we get rid of violence, as simply being incredible.
Yes, it is incredible. And I'm tired of having to make this point over and over again, but if you have to use the word incredible, maybe consider the context and figure out if what you are saying is in fact not credible. That anyone with half a brain would make up such an absurd argument. No one thinks that getting rid of religion would stop violence. I don't think that there is anything we could ever do to achieve that. And those who are committed to causing harm will find reason to, regardless. But what I really like about this is the idea that if we got rid of religion and it, say, eliminated 50% of the violence in the world, that somehow wouldn't be a really good thing because it didn't get rid of 100% of it. I'm not saying it would have any impact whatsoever, but asserting it wouldn't be worth doing in the case that it lowered it at all, whether intentionally or because you're just really bad at arguing, it's just completely asinine, much like your good self. And with that, I'm done. I need to find someone to start a fight with me so they can smash the last few hours of video creation out of my bonds. Good day. Did you know there are various buttons and doodads on this very page? There's a subscribe button here, a notification bell there, and a like button down that way. Press them now. Don't ask a question, just do it before they stop you. You wouldn't want them to stop you, would you? Not in insert country here. Also, while you're at it, buy some merch, join the Whiskey Club, and support me on Patreon. That'll show 'em.